You are an articulate, powerful spokesperson for common sense.
Riley Gaines is a hero.
She's a college swimmer who was cheated against.
What a lot of people don't get is the freedom of speech issue that we're having. It is chilling to see how people want to control your thoughts, control what you say. The breakdown of freedoms, this directly points in the direction of Marxism. Open any history book and see how this turns out for any civilization. And it's not pretty. You are this next generation, and you are the ones with the power to do something about it.
Oh my gosh. Hello. It is such a... You guys are so funny. All of this for simply saying men are men. Oh my gosh. Anyways, what a warm welcome. Certainly a warmer welcome that I had actually at a Turning Point event in San Francisco a few months back, where I was, for delivering a message very similar to what I'm going to be talking to you guys about. I was assaulted. I was punched by men wearing dresses, which fortunately for me, their punches don't really hurt that bad, and ultimately was held for ransom for over 4 hours, where these protesters demanded that if I wanted to make it home to see my family safely again, I had to pay them money. Also a warmer welcome than what I received in Congress last week. I don't know if some of you saw the clip. I'm sitting there, I mean, it's pretty unfathomable to me that a 23-year-old, recent college graduate, college swimmer at that, has to go to D.C. to sit in front of Congress to explain to them that men and women are different, and then to be on the other side of that and have them be confused by this explanation. But I went there. I'm sitting there, and Representative Lee from Pennsylvania is reading her opening monologue, and she says something to the effect of, you know, I can't believe I have to be forced to sit here and listen to this transphobic bigotry, is what she said. And so I'm thinking to myself, if being pro-woman, pro-fairness, pro-reality, pro-common sense, if that is immediately deemed anti-trans, then wouldn't being pro-trans inherently be anti-woman? And what do we call someone who's anti-woman? We call them a misogynist, which is exactly what I ended up calling Ranking Member Lee, which she did not like. They do not like when their own intersectional language is used against them, and it essentially sent her and the entire hearing into a tailspin. She then moved to have my words removed from the record in an attempt to erase history, which, let it be known, that did not work, and congressional record still stands that she is, in fact, a misogynist. I'm sure some of you are fairly familiar with the events that led me here, you know, the how I got here, but I'll briefly summarize this. I proudly finished my career at University of Kentucky as a 12-time NCAA All-American, a five-time SEC champion, actually still the SEC record holder in the 200 butterfly, making me one of the fastest Americans of all time. But my senior year, of course, I had the goal of winning a national title, which would mean becoming the fastest woman in the country in my respective event. And I'm right on pace to achieve this goal. Until all of a sudden, this name, this swimmer, comes out of nowhere. Keep in mind, a name none of us had ever heard of before. And this is the first time we became aware of a swimmer named Lia Thomas. A lot of red flags at the time. But it wasn't, we remained in the dark, wondering who this person was, until an article came out. And in this article, it very briefly disclosed that Lia Thomas is in fact formerly Will Thomas, who swam 3 years on the men's team at University of Pennsylvania before deciding to switch to the women's team, where ultimately, at best, he ranked 462nd in the nation the year prior when competing against the men, to again now dominating the women's category. Of course, I saw the problem with this. My teammates saw the problem. My parents, my coaches Anyone with any amount of brain activity saw the problem with this. But the NCAA did not. They saw nothing wrong with this, and they announced that Thomas's participation in the women's category was a non-negotiable, meaning, of course, there was nothing we could do, no questions we could ask or concerns we could raise. We were told we had to accept this with a smile on our face. And so, of course, to no one's surprise, that first day of competition, Thomas swam to a national title in the 500 freestyle, beating out Olympians, beating out American record holders. Guys, these aren't scrubs. They're the best female swimmers this world has ever seen. And again, he beat those girls by body lengths. But the next day of competition was the 200 freestyle, which is the event that Thomas and I raced each other in. So we get on the block, we dive off, we swim our 8 laps of freestyle, we touch the wall at the end. I look up at the scoreboard, and almost impossibly enough, we had gone the exact same time down to the 100th of a second, meaning, of course, we tied. You're clapping, but I would say that's pretty embarrassing for a 6'4" man. Anyways, but really what thrusted me over the edge, of course, all season we knew what was happening in regard to the unfair competition and the locker room and the silencing that we were facing from our universities. Of course, we all knew this was wrong. But it wasn't until we get out of the water and we go behind the awards podium where the NCAA official looks at both Thomas and myself, again, Thomas who's towering over me, and he says, "Great job, you two, but you tied. And we only have one trophy, so we're going to give the trophy to Leah. Sorry, Riley, you don't get one." I was so taken aback by this. The first thing, my adrenaline was high, my heart rate was high, so the first thing I thought ended up being the first thing that I said. And I looked at this official and I said, "Isn't this everything that Title IX was passed to prevent from happening?" But I continued to press. I said, "Why?" I asked the question no one dared ask all season. I said, "Why are you adamant on giving the trophy to a man in the women's 200 freestyle?" And he didn't have an answer. They didn't give him a script of what to say when someone asked why. And so ultimately, and I appreciate his honesty now, he looked at me with a sad face. I could tell he didn't even believe what he was about to say. But he looked at me and he said, "Riley, we've been advised that when photos are being taken, it's crucial that Leah is holding the trophy. Again, you can pose with this one, but end of the day, you give yours back. Leah takes the trophy home, you go home empty-handed, end of story." That was the moment when I knew I couldn't keep waiting for someone else, because truthfully I was cowering. I naively thought someone else would stand up for us. What wishful thinking that was. If we wait for the people to do the right thing, we'll be waiting for forever. And I realized that in that moment. I thought a coach, someone within the NCAA, someone with political power, some other swimmer, someone's dad would come down there and yank this man out of our locker rooms. That's what I was waiting for. But I realized, how in the world could we expect someone else to save us if we weren't even willing to save ourselves? This has to come from us, as women, as female athletes. So again, that's the how, not to mention, like I alluded to, the locker room, the silencing. But more importantly is the why. Why is this happening? Why are we all here in this room? Why do we so fiercely and so passionately care about defending our freedoms? And when I ask myself the question of why, as a Christian, I can tell you why this is happening. And it's entirely spiritual warfare. Paul warns us several times throughout various chapters of the Bible, Acts and Romans. He tells us we will reach a point where bitter is seen as sweet, and dark is seen as light, and evil is seen as moral. And it's undeniable that that's not what we're seeing now. And that's not me saying that people who are struggling with gender dysphoria are evil. No, of course not. But deceit is evil. And manipulation is evil. And affirming lies and delusions, that's evil. And to continue with the why, from a worldly perspective, Why do we care so much? Make no mistake, this is so much bigger than just women's sports. Our First Amendment rights are being infringed upon. I'm a big Seth Dillon fan, and I love everything he says today, what he shared with you guys. It's so true. Our freedom of speech is being compromised. The language that we're using is changing and shifting entirely. This idea of biological woman makes me want to throw up. So if I can be of any encouragement to you, stop adding that prerequisite, because when you do that, even if it's subconscious, even if you subconsciously add that word biological, you're admitting that there's an unbiological alternative to being a woman or a man or a male or a female or a boy or a girl, and there's not. It's now cervix haver or uterus owner or menstruator or bleeder or birthing person or chest feeder. Mr. Rachel Levine most recently has now been referring to women as egg producers. And in peer-reviewed medical published journals, what they're referring to female anatomy as is a bonus hole. So be mindful of the language that you use, because it's powerful. When you control language, you control everything. And that's very evident through our media and our government and different things. The premise of this issue and a lot of the cultural issues that we're seeing plague this country is that we're denying objective truth. The most basic of truths at that. When we deny man and woman, again, the essence of humanity, we're essentially denying that the sky is blue. We're being asked to say 2 + 2 is 5, and we're adhering. I don't believe the people in this room, of course, are adhering. But as a larger society, we are, even our leaders. That's why this matters. And if you lay out the different pieces, like the denial of truth, like the breakdown of our freedoms, like the breakdown of family and the breakdown of our faith, the preying on vulnerable populations, the propaganda that's being spread throughout, again, mainstream media, the list goes on. If you lay all this out for what it is, and you just got to hear some of this, it points directly in the direction of cultural Marxism. And I encourage you to talk to someone who has fled these countries, like North Korea, or China, or Cuba, or Argentina, or Venezuela, or Germany, or Russia. Talk to someone from these countries and they will tell you that what we're seeing here in the U.S. is exactly what they saw at one point in their country, or what they may continue to see happening in those countries. Myself, what I constantly refer back to is this idea of true love and what that really means. Understand that those words are synonymous, truth and love. It is loving to say the truth. It's not kind to lie. It's not compassionate to lie. That's not what love is. It's loving to say the truth. And of course, telling the truth is a revolutionary act in a time of deceit. I've heard Charlie Kirk say many times now, which I admire how hard that guy works, how amazing this conference is. It's incredibly admirable. But I've heard him say several times now that something we should all dedicate ourselves to doing is these next 11 months. I think we can all agree we're at a precipice here as a country. These next 11 months, working as hard as you have ever worked to help save America. In whatever capacity that might be, running for school board, getting involved in whatever way, donating to people who are on the ground, like organizations like Turning Point, people who are on the ground doing the work. These next 11 months, we have to dedicate ourselves to working as hard as we have ever worked. And I encourage you to challenge, each and every one of you should challenge yourselves to that. This is a nation of decline. And I think we've spent a lot of time talking about what's going on in the White House. But understand, change does not start in the White House. It starts in your house. And so parents, set a good example. Show your children love, whether that be through your personal relationships, whether that be through your marriage. Teach them the goodness of God. Teach your daughters or your sons, teach them how to be strong masculine men and be willing to defend your daughters because they're in desperate need of that. For evil to triumph, it only takes good men and good women to do nothing. A lie will never become the truth. Evil will never become moral. Bad will never become good just because it's accepted and embraced by a small portion of society, which is what we're seeing now. You might see how our politicians vote. You might see what's going on, again, in the media, what's being taught in academia, how corporate America is responding, even what's going on in our churches. There are so many different realms where this issue, the gender ideology movement, but again, broader than that, there are so many different realms where this has entirely taken over. We've allowed them to maintain the public square. But those things, like I said, a lie will never become truth. And so don't fall for the lie. Don't believe the narrative that it will. When I graduated from Kentucky last year, I ended up graduating with my degree in human health sciences and health law. And I had every intention upon graduating to go to dental school. To be an endodontist, actually, was what I was going to specialize in, which is someone who performs root canals, which now looking back, thank goodness I'm not there. And I kind of justify God's calling now by saying I'm still working on getting to the root of the problem coming out of people's mouths. But by no means did I feel prepared for this. I mean, how could you? I never would have even imagined this would be a conversation we would have to be having. I didn't feel prepared for this. Ashamedly, I feel ashamed to admit it, I didn't know much about our government. I knew we had 3 branches, but that's about it. My public speaking courses in college, my face turned the color of the suit I'm wearing. But I realized God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And if he brings you to it, he will certainly bring you through it. Just as he did with Moses, who led the Israelites out with Aaron and his staff, just as he did with Joshua, who he promised a victory over the Canaanites, and just as he did with Esther before she was brought before the king. We often conflate courage and fearlessness. Of course, being fearless means you have no fear. But being courageous is different. You see the threats. You see the risk. You understand what they mean. But you're still willing to do the right and fair and just and moral thing, despite the fear, despite the backlash. So I want to encourage you guys. Be bold. Be courageous. Be willing to say the truth. I have people ask me all the time, and it cracks me up. You know, how do you find the courage? How are you so brave to be so young to do what you're doing? And I respond back with, easily. Because I'm literally saying the most basic thing anyone could possibly ever say. But we all need to be willing to say the emperor wears no clothes. Because that's the point we're at. We all see it. We acknowledge it. But no one is willing to call it out. It's our jobs, the people in this room, the people who are here and ready to roll up their sleeves and say enough is enough. It's our jobs to look at the emperor and say, wait, he's naked, which is almost too real nowadays. I would say the scariest thing about our society, other than the fact that we live in a godless society, is the inability to think for ourselves and the unwillingness to admit when we're wrong. Be a David. Be an Esther. In a world where in a society where that's not deemed the right thing to do the right thing. People are looking to you, whether that be your daughters, whether that be even people in leadership positions, as I mentioned, because by the hands and feet of our leaders, the people leading this country, they're actively taking us down this slippery slope. And I say it's a slippery slope, but actually I think it's a cliff with jagged, sharp rocks at the bottom, which sounds pretty grim, but it's not, because we already know who wins, because the Bible tells us who wins. I could stand up here truly for hours, really days probably, and share with you guys different instances of this same story. It's always the same story. It's this like mediocre man who's bad in his sport who then decides to become a record smasher in the women's sports. It never happens the other way around, of course not. I could stand up here and share examples all day long. But I don't want to do that because you guys know it. You see it. You see it happening before your very eyes, even if it's stuff they won't show you. And so again, I couldn't be more grateful to be here in front of you all. And don't wait until you're directly impacted to take a stand. Like I did. That's exactly what I did. I waited until I was impacted. But if we all do that, we'll be at the bottom of that cliff at that point. And so thank you guys very much, and I appreciate it. You guys have fun.